This meeting is being recorded. It still psychs me out. I'm not used to it. Folks, weekly Q&A is back. Dr. James, Dr. Mike, we got a little off schedule, but now we're back, baby. Dr. Mike, how's it going?
It's good, man. I can't wait to dig into our first person's questions.
Ooh, me too. I got some love and some hate for wearing that Queensland jersey last week, but I'm glad to see we had so many Australian fans and rugby fans in general. Yeah, Aussies. We're with you.
Oi.
Oi.
All right. Shall we bring up our first caller?
Let's do it.
David.
There he is. David.
Okay. So David says, hey, docs, what do you think about using the greasing the groove method as a tool for recovery? Basically, some people claim that doing a few sets every day of, for example, push-ups and pull-ups far from failure would get blood flowing through the muscles and thus help speed up recovery. Also, in what effect would greasing the groove have on volume landmarks? Should I be concerned about lowering my mesocycle volume if I plan on using this method? Thank you in advance. Much love from Macedonia.
Oh, it is David then, isn't it?
It is David, almost
nice.
Certainly. So, where do we start from here? Let me give my lay of the land, James, and you can give your shtick. So,
sounds good.
It's like from greasing the groove probably does two things. If you do it very low volume and low intensity, it can actually enhance recovery. That's a marginal effect. It's not huge. Probably enhances your day-to-day recovery, week-to-week recovery at the expense of long-term months-style joint stuff. So some balance to play with that. But I would say if you have to get somewhere real quick, then you practice very often. Sometimes you practice loaded, sometimes unloaded. So it can do that. In addition, because it's practice, it probably makes your nervous system way better at the movement. So you actually increase your numbers on the bench press, or let's say you do more numbers on push-ups and pull-ups because your technique is better, because you're more well-practiced at it. You can coordinate nervous system better. I would say there's a small window in which that all works really well. And then it's very easy to go out the other side where you just do too much and then you're not recovering very well. So what I would say is there should be pulsatility to your training anyway. So I would say give a really good overloading stimulus. It might take you 3 days to recover. Between day 1 and 3, you could go in and do very, very unchallenging work for technique, essentially. And that way you get sort of the best of all worlds. I wouldn't do this all the time because it does wear on your joints. It does psychologically stress you a lot. It's just, so, there's a situation where you essentially get psychologically bored with the same kind of training. Gee whiz, greasing the groove makes that happen real fast. So what I would say is greasing the groove is a great method for what you could say is sort of a concentrated loading mesocycle, where you really put all in for that fitness characteristic to try to maximize as much as possible, with the understanding that the next mesocycle or 2 mesos later, you're going to really back up away from it and give it time to heal, give the joint structures time to heal, give yourself some novelty in order for those adaptations to be realistic after that. And as far as what volume landmark effects it has, it'll probably increase your MRV substantially, even integrated in with the extra work, because you get so good at recovering. It'll probably lower your maximum adaptive, it'll raise your maximum adaptive volume. So you'll have to do more volume to get the same gains. But luckily you're doing a lot more, so you're getting very good gains, possibly higher gains for a short period of time. And it really does raise your minimum effective volume substantially, because if you get real used to doing something, you get real good at it, you're going to need a lot more of it to cause a change. So it's by no means, it's probably the least efficient way to train. Like, hey, train this all the time, sometimes hard, sometimes not. And the benefit is you get marginally better at it for a month or two, and then it flatlines. So it's exactly what we use as a temporary strategy to really push something ahead, and then we back off and do something else. There's a special case for this for specific training modalities, which necessarily require a lot of time between hard training sessions. So like jiu-jitsu or wrestling or kickboxing, you just can't go hard all the time. A hard session fucks you up for a certain number of days. Between that, you can grease the groove, but that's how the sports train anyway. They just have lighter practices and they do drilling and stuff like that. It's the same principle as greasing the groove. So I would say for hypertrophy, it offers almost no benefit. For strength, it offers a considerable benefit in the short term, not the long term. And for sport training, it's kind of something you do all the time. James?
Yeah, you did a really good job there. I'm going to revisit some of those points because they're worth discussing a bit more. So greasing the groove, there's definitely like a hint of truth to this, right? And this is something that we've talked about in our recovery strategies talks, where doing some light training can actually definitely improve your recovery. However, this is taking that idea a little bit too far, right? So in this case, using that like essentially everyday style of doing some type of movement, what you're doing is eliminating the potential for having really, really overloading training on some of those days and just taking a very, very minimal, if not totally ineffective training stimulus every day. So one of the problems you run into with this method is kind of a lot of junk volume, right? Where you are maybe feeling pretty good, but you're also just not training that hard. You're not really making any progress just because you don't have that pulsatility, as Dr. Mike said. So in this case, you're sacrificing some of those days that could be like really, really good and stimulative for a lot of instances of maybe MEV or even less training in many cases. So in that regard, it's maybe not as good for hypertrophy. One thing that I think, which Dr. Mike kind of touched on at the end there, where this is really helpful is in sport training, specifically for developing skills and tactics. So the reason why we wouldn't necessarily want to do it for something like strength or hypertrophy all the time, as Dr. Mike said, you might get a quick short-term benefit, but in the long term, you start to accrue more adaptive resistance because you're repeating the same stimulus more frequently than you otherwise would. So basically, you'll see rapid gains, and then you'll plateau out really, really fast, and then you need to vary more often. Go for it.
James, real quick, just to put on your point, a lot of the guys that advocate greasing the groove, not all of them, not meant as an insult, are like sort of intermediate/beginner intermediates that have done it for a month. And they're like, you guys, my bench went up by 50 pounds. And it's true. It really does happen. Where are those guys at the world championships? Where are they? They don't exist because they go from 350 to 400 squat ASAP. And then they stay 400, 410, 400, 410, like the regular rest of us. And if they try to grease the groove again, they end up having hurt knees and hurt back. And you're like, oh shit, I actually can't squat this often long term. So it ends up being like, it's almost the same path to the same place. You just get there faster and pay a little bit of a risk of cost of going and doing too much and having your joints get fucked up. So concentrated loading is the best way to think about this, necessarily short-term strategy. Sorry, James. I just had to say that because a lot of people are like, greasing the groove is incredible. It works for me. It's like, you know, you look at the guy's YouTube and it's like some 13-year-old kid like, oh, word up. Let me know when you show up to Worlds and beat everyone.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like Smolov. Like Smolov put so much like on my squat, but then I died.
Yes.
You know, same idea. And then kind of just to wrap it up, like I think in the areas of sport skills and tactics, it's very useful. But here's the kind of catcher on that, in that those things, as you do them so frequently, they tend to improve really, I would say not rapidly, but steadily. So although you might be doing kind of the same things, you are getting incrementally better at them, whether it's technically or kind of in terms of how sharp you are, meaning like your reactive or predictive ability, or your ability to integrate those skills into new tactics that you are still learning and refining. So you kind of have some variability into that built in because you're doing it so frequently, you're making steady progress, and you're able to start doing incrementally more challenging things over time. That's sport training. Anyone who's ever done sports before knows, oh yeah, like when I first came to rugby practice, I was learning how to pass and catch the ball. Next thing I knew, I was running and passing and catching the ball. Next thing I knew, I was playing against a defender. That's exactly that, right? So no brainer there. But for kind of training underlying fitness characteristics, as Dr. Mike already laid out, you know, maybe not the best way to go about it. In that case, kind of concentrated loading and or like just having pulsatility in your program gets that same effect without compromising the adaptive potential of that training.
Beautiful. Next up is Forrest Nash of Forrest Nash Fitness.
We got a lot of votes on his. All right. Well done.
Forrest says, hi, docs. What would you say is a realistic ratio of muscle mass to fat mass someone might gain in a moderate caloric surplus, gaining 0.25% of body weight per week, for example, assuming they manage the training, nutrition, and recovery pretty well? How much would the ratio change for a beginner, intermediate, or advanced trainee with average genetics? I've heard various ratios thrown around like 50-50, muscle to fat, 25% muscle, 75% fat. But I'm interested to hear your take on the subject. P.S. I totally understand if the idea it's not productive to focus too much on expectations of progress. Rather, just do the best way we can and let the results fall where they may. But this is a question I get from clients sometimes, and I would like to be able to give more informed answer, even if it's just a ballpark estimate. Many thanks for all the great content. So the first thing I'm going to say is we're going to take beginners and we're just going to throw them right out of the discussion. Yep. The next group of people we're going to take out of the discussion is people that either use drugs or are using more drugs than usual. Guys will say like, hey man, gain 20 pounds, this fucking last prep. Like, sweet, you went from 4 IUs to 8 IUs with your growth hormone. Like it's not a neat trick. You know, everyone knows how to do that. Well, everyone everyone's an exaggeration, but the pertinent people that can do that. Okay. So there's not much to say there. However, for sort of the average folks who are drug-free and sort of intermediate, advanced, I don't want to talk about advanced because it's even more depressing, but, let's just stick to sort of drug-free intermediates. I'll say I threw some numbers out. These are guesses, wild guesses, but they're informed guesses because James and I have been around the block. I'm going to throw my guesses out. I'm going to caveat them, and then James will let us know what he thinks about my guesses and see maybe it's different. Now, remember, there's huge variance here. So some people gain much less than this. Some people gain much more, and it's totally fine. And so again, but to your point, Forrest, you're very good at saying that, look, like, I don't even know if this is useful. People just keep fucking asking me. So one of its, sort of the reasons it's not as useful is because it's a huge variance anyway. So it's kind of like, how much does a car cost in America? Like, I don't know, like anywhere between $15,000 and $700,000, like somewhere there's an average, but it's not really say much. So, okay. So here's the deal. I think if you're getting 50-50 muscle to fat, you're doing real well for yourself. That's real well for yourself. And up to as low as 25% muscle, 75 fat is really just fine. You're doing great. Okay. 50-50 is real good, right? So if we take a look at 0.25% of body weight per week, then let's say we take that out for a month, that's 1% per month. And then let's take that out for 4 months, that's 4% body weight. And let's say you weigh 200 pounds, that's 8 pounds, right? So 200 pounds over the course of 4 months, if you gain 4 pounds of muscle, that's really good. That's really good. You might be able to sandwich 2 of those in a year. 8 pounds of muscle in a year is real good. And if you gain only half of that still, 2 pounds and then 4 pounds in a year or so, 4 pounds of muscle in a year is real good stuff. That's kind of what the average intermediate is going to gain anyway. That's just like par for the course. So I would say if you're doing something like, 95 to 5 or 90 to 10, again, totally realistic. That could just be you. But, if that really is the case, then James and I were your coaches. We would zoom in on what you're doing wrong first, because we would assume maybe you're doing something wrong. But maybe that's just your genetics, and that's how the cookie crumbles. If you claimed that you got 100% or 75-25 in favor of muscle to fat, we'd be highly skeptical. But then when we look into it, and if that was true, we'd be like, you're just a great genetic responder. You did a lot of the right stuff. So I would say 50-50 to 75-25 is somewhere where many people will land. I can't say most because I don't have the statistical data to back that up, but I say a lot of people. So if you're doing 50-50, I would be super happy. And if I was doing 25-75, I'd be like, this is great. Things are going really well. What I would really, really advocate people not to do is expect 100% or fall for the maintaining myth that you could just keep the same body fat percentage for years and just add on muscle really fast. Like that means you're, gaining like, that's probably like a 75-25 ratio or something, right? So, yes, it's okay to gain fat, a substantial amount of fat. And even if you gain half fat or three quarters fat, once you diet that off, there could be a lot of muscle there. And that's totally fine, totally to be expected. James?
I'm glad. So I was like, okay, pick numbers before Dr. Mike starts talking and let's see if we were on the same page. And we were. So I was saying, in my mind, I was thinking like a median value for like not particularly good or like less good would be like 35-65, right? So we were seemingly pretty much in the same mindset. And 50-50 is definitely doable, but it's like definitely probably the upper end of the pace that I've experienced with myself or my clients. Like Mike said, if you're claiming more than 50, I'd be like, maybe not, but definitely like between that 50 and 25. So I was going with the median of like 35-65 is kind of what I would expect, unless they were like my friend Steve, who's just like as slow twitch beanpole as it gets. He's my best bud in the world, but he's been lifting for a couple of years and he's just a slow gainer, right? And then you just look at that person, you just know like, okay, doesn't take a sports scientist to tell you that this is a slow twitch kind of person, and they're maybe not going to be at that 25-75 mark. Maybe they'll be a little bit less than that, but that's to be expected at that point.
Yep, we'll take anything we can get at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okie dokie. Moving on to Henrik Anderson.
You son of a bitch, Henrik. Come on! Too many control. Get out of here. Are you fucking kidding me? There we go.
Boom. Can any of the following things listed below be harmful or unhealthy? So first of all, yes, everything can be harmful or unhealthy.
I was going to say all of those are unhealthy.
Yes, but we'll simplify for you, Henrik. We'll say like, are they very likely? And do we really need to take a lot of caveats to make sure they're not harmful? It's like saying, can brushing your teeth result in death? Actually, yes. Can skydiving result in death? Like, well, yeah, you really should be pretty careful about skydiving. Brushing your teeth, you really got to try to get killed, right? So, and he says, what about not fully developed physical individuals, such as myself? We'll focus on that for the discussion. We won't talk about regular people. So 16 years old. All right, so systemic and or local overreaching is, so I'll do mine first, and James will do his. Hopefully I don't get too much wrong. Systemic and or local overreaching is probably a very minor concern. You'd have to really fuck up to get yourself, in some kind of trouble. The way we really see that is more like heat deaths, in American football. We don't really see much else. So rhabdo is possible, but you really got to try and be super stupid about it. Massing is very unlikely to be harmful and unhealthy, especially if you're actually massing and not just eating cookies and getting up to 350 playing PlayStation. I would call that massing. So massing is actually very healthy for young folks. Cutting can be potentially sort of unhealthy, especially if you get very lean for very long. You try to really reduce your body weight. Like I know some people who in wrestling basically gained almost no weight in high school because they were trying to make the same wrestling weight class all the time. That's really fucking stupid. It absolutely will impact the degree of your neural development to some extent. Most of that catches up, maybe not all of it. Definitely impacts your adult height and can give you unique bone conditions and all sorts of problems later. I do not like cutting very much for anyone under the age of 18. I'm really not a big fan of it. I think the best bet, just to answer a question no one asked, everyone, nothing, Dr. Mike answers question. My favorite response to that meme, when they say like nobody, and then there's a colon, there's nothing said. I'd be like, well, actually, nobody didn't say anything. So why are you including that? Just say what you want to say, you stupid motherfucker. You don't know. Nobody isn't even paying attention. In any case, cutting, my formal opinion on cutting is if you are over fat at age under 18, what you should be doing is eating healthy and taking lots of physical activity. You don't look at the scale. You just do that. And if that results in weight loss, cool. If it results in you just maintaining weight and then your body growing into the rest of the weight as you grow in height and muscularity, that's even better. So purposeful attempts to lose weight, really just not a great idea for people under the age of 18. Once you're 18 or over, it's really just do whatever the fuck you want. Constant body weight fluctuations, always gaining or cutting. If that doesn't involve really nasty cuts, like if you gain 15 pounds and you cut 10, gain 15, cut 10, it's totally fine. Totally fine. Mild caloric restriction has absolutely no harmful effects on individuals your age, but really nasty and pervasive restriction absolutely does. And that's all I got on that. James, what do you think? How did I do?
I thought you did great. So I'm kind of going to piggyback off of Dr. Mike's sentiment. And really, I feel like most people under 18 really shouldn't be doing really formal dieting, right? It's more about like developing, like Mike said, good, healthy eating habits. And kind of if you're somebody who is maybe getting scouted for, potentially playing like D1 sports or something, that's something you can tackle as you get into your collegiate years. But if you are like middle school, high school age, you would have a really hard time convincing me that anybody who is otherwise healthy needs to think about massing or cutting. At that point, learning healthy eating habits, getting a good relationship with exercise, hydration, your body weight, things like that, and going from there. So that being said, the other one that kind of comes to mind here is systemic and local overreaching. And I don't think all of these things are kind of inherently unhealthy. It's maybe not always in your best interest to do. But I think that level of training is also unnecessary for somebody at that age group, because you are effectively a beginner unless you started lifting weights when you were like 12, which pretty much nobody does. So at that point, like the pushing your body to the point of overreaching is very likely unnecessary and could actually be counterproductive in many cases. So as somebody who is, I would say adolescent or teenage years, learning about lifting and getting into lifting, you should be leaving a little bit on the table. And that is probably in your best interest, not only for performing well if you're doing like high school athletics, but also in terms of just maintaining some of that adaptive potential that you want over time and not burning yourself out unnecessarily, so that by the time you get to college or adult age, like you already have like fucking knee and back and hip issues. Like you don't want that. So I would say massing and cutting, kind of unnecessary. Systemic and or local overreaching, unnecessary. And then that basically eliminates the bottom one anyway. So kind of the idea being train hard, learn about the techniques, learn about the methodology of training, learn how to eat healthy and monitor your body weight and kind of go from there. And once you get into more competitive athletic endeavors, then you can start dabbling in those things as an adult. But and it's kind of arbitrary in some ways, right? So like, what's the difference between 18 and 17? Well, it's it's 1 year. It's somewhat arbitrary, but I do think that it is a good kind of vague landmark that we can use. We say like 18's an adult. You can make your own decisions at that point. 16, you're still developing. I mean, frankly, you're still developing into your 20s in many cases. So I think a lot of those things are unnecessary altogether.
Totally. Next up is rhinome.
Say what?
RHY.
Hooray.
Can't be too many RHYs.
Got it.
Dear doctors, did the cute lady next to me at the mirror see that I took the 12 kilogram dumbbells for my laterals instead of the 10 kilogram dumbbells? Rhinome, I can make this much more particular of an answer. She didn't just see you do it. She didn't want to feel you do it, but she did. She was hit with a wave a la women's reaction to Elvis Presley at his prime. I forgot where I was. I forgot what my name was. I can't feel my legs. I want to give myself over to this megalith of a man and just have him set me straight. Just be with me. Can I smell a part of your clothing? Just leave me a piece of your clothing and just be on with what you're going to do in this life. And whenever I meet my husband eventually and have children, I can have my little rag of your clothing in some kind of tiny little like dresser, and I take it out every now and again, and I just smell like, oh my God. Real ultimate manhood exists. And now I know that it does because of 12 kilogram dumbbells.
Especially if you kind of were like walking over to the 10s and did one of these like, and then you did the 12s instead and hit reps at the same RIR. My God. Because she's been watching you the week before. She knew what your RIR was.
She's like, yeah, but it's a technique and a hold solid. And she's like, oh my God. It is.
I can't believe you did that.
I would propose marriage to this man, but I don't feel myself worthy. You may actually not be getting laid because women aren't feeling like they're up to the challenge. Nobody really likes to get, shot down, so she's just like, I'm just going to be on my merry way, living my mortal life here in the presence of God.
That's the sad part about gym life as a man, where you think like, yeah, once I get buff, all the ladies are going to be all over me. But what happens in actuality? All the dudes, everyone's like, whoa, great job, bro. You're done. What's your MRV for delts? God damn.
I like the oddly technical question. All right. Next up is, just type in plastic, James. I'm not reading this
plastic
full name.
Plastic J91.
J91. That sounds like some kind of jet fuel for.
Yeah, it does.
From an exotic fighter. So I got to look him up myself. Oh, you've got him pulled up. Okay. He says, hey, docs, Mike, you've talked recently about how the different cardio modalities can interfere with lifting. I do a lot of walking. Recently discovered that my cardiovascular endurance is really poor, since I don't regularly engage in more intensive cardio modalities. Do you have any advice for how someone might improve their cardiovascular endurance while minimizing interference? So what I'm going to say for James's answer to the question of how poor your endurance really is, how you know that, and why that's relevant. I'm sure James has lots to say about that. But let me just give you two really cool videos to try that will give you a lot of insight on this, because we do already actually have these videos out, and they answer a shitload of your question and probably more. So one thing you want to Google is preventing muscle loss on a cut, cardio strategies, RP video, tons of stuff on there. And then another one just called lifting versus cardio. These are all RP videos. They're all recorded relatively short time ago. And they really talk about the trade-offs. And especially the cutting one tells you, look, if you don't want to lose muscle, here's how you go about cutting on cardio. Like, it really just answers your question directly. Almost, if you want more cardiovascular endurance, you'll see in the two videos that there's a spectrum. More endurance also demands all sorts of things from you. Less endurance demands less and interferes with lifting less. So you just have to slide that scale a little bit over and just try to keep the impact really low. So my just off the cuff recommendation, if you are going to watch those videos later, is I would just do lots of either difficult swimming or elliptical work, because both are very, very little impact, if any, and they really systemically target your cardiovascular endurance. And I would do them relatively far away from your lifting in such a way that it doesn't even impact recovery right after and adaptation right after, nor does it make you tired and impact the magnitude of stimulus right before. That's my concern there. James, what do you think?
Yes, you kind of hit it on the head right at the preface of that question, which is, how do you know, that your cardio is not, appropriate, and why do you want it to be better? And so to me, if I kind of contextualize that makes me think that something in your daily life makes you feel like you're out of shape. That's my guess. Otherwise, like, you're just doing cardio for its own sake. So if you're just sitting around thinking like, I need more cardio, the question really is like, do you need more cardio? And if the answer is like, well, no, I just want more cardio, and that's fine too. And then you can actually train for cardio, but just know ahead of time, and this is going to be well covered in those videos Dr. Mike mentioned, there's just trade-offs that you have to make at that point, because you can't just train everything and expect not one of those one of those training variables to budge a little bit, right? So that's why we have the volume landmarks to kind of dial those in and say, if I add cardio, that means I got to take away from lifting at least a little bit. And that's how we kind of balance those things out. But I'm guessing that there's probably something in your life that you're doing. Maybe it's going upstairs or walking to work or doing yard work or something that makes you feel like you're out of shape. And in those cases, what I have found is that sometimes just doing more of that stuff, whatever it is that you feel like you suck at, actually is just a very fine alternative to doing more structured cardio if the purpose is not specifically like endurance training for something specific. Like if you want to be able to run a long distance, well, there's not really any way around it. You got to go do some running. But if you just want to not feel like a fat piece of shit when you take out the garbage, you can essentially do kind of like, I hate saying this, but it's kind of like a mini strongman type activities around the house. Like that's what I do out here in Montana. I got all these goddamn logs I got to cut all over the time. I do basically lumberjack strongman all the time. And that's my cardio. I just treat it as my cardio, get my heart rate up a little bit. And does it interfere with my lifting? Sure. But at the same time, I've recognized that that is a trade-off because I'm doing quote unquote some kind of cardio activity. And that's what I use it for. And then when I go and actually have to do it, if I, because we, like, for example, we cut like 8 trees down recently and I had to get rid of all those goddamn logs. I don't feel like a fat piece of shit because it's just part of like my normal routine. So I would say you might be able to kind of contextualize any of those activities where maybe you feel bad. And maybe it's something as simple as walking or going up and down stairs. Like just do a little bit more of that every week and see if you get better at it. Maybe you can wear a weighted vest when you walk or when you do a light weighted vest. Don't put on like a 70-pound vest, put on like a 10-pound vest, go from there and just do stuff like that. Again, keep in mind, like if it's just for feeling better with your activities of daily living, it's one thing. If it's training for endurance in a specific modality, that's just a different thing. And then there's different trade-offs with both of those.
Also, be less fat.
That always helps.
Huge. It helps huge. All right. Next up, tired of writing just phenomenal science fiction novels, Daniel Brown asks us a question about being a personal trainer.
All right.
There he is. Daniel says, hey, docs, I'm a personal trainer. I'm often limited to doing 1-hour training sessions with clients. How would you go about increasing volume for clients over a meso with limited time? Thanks. Well, fundamentally, you really can't unless you want to trade off something else. And so there's one way to do it. It's normally when you start with clients, a lot of your sessions involve technique learning that's not very stimulative, and then some stimulative sets. As you go weeks and months with the same client, you end up having less technique learning and more like, hey, like you're warmed up, let's fucking crush it because you already know how to do good technique. So that is a sort of automatic way to increase the volume, but of course it doesn't last. If you're training someone for years, they know all the exercises already, they only need to learn technique. Their volume is now primarily dependent on how long you can be in the gym and how many sessions they have. What you can do is you can talk to the clients and say, look, like you told me you want a big chest and big arms. They're like, yes. You're only coming in twice a week, which is a lot of time for us to work, but you can benefit from 3 times a week. I can physically make it bigger. Now, if it's worth the extra $100 a week to you, great. If it's not, then I just want you to know you understand the trade-offs, right? And then all of a sudden, you're like, okay, great. It's like when you go to the dentist, you're like, hey, do I need to be brushing my teeth after every meal? He's like, yeah, look, we tell people that. No, but at least brush them once a day. And if you brush like once every other day or something, at least floss for the love of God. But they'll give you a spectrum of like shit you can do and how much you can get out of it. So you want your clients to understand that, like, yes, more is better, but it's not necessarily better for their level of trade-off. And at the end of that, as long as you're not resting excessively between exercises, something, as long as you're not blabbing, that's a great way to increase volume, is blab less. Then you're kind of impinged on that. That's it. You just have to do as good of a job as you can. And if you still want really great results for a specific muscle group, you got to prioritize that muscle group. You got to make sure to put it at the beginning of every workout and hit it every single workout. Let's say you train twice or 3 times a week. If your client wants a big back, it's back first, 3 times a week. Different kinds of back movements, hard. And then, all the other stuff is kind of more on maintenance. And that's just an inherent limitation. James?
Yeah, that's really good. And then sometimes you might have clients who maybe just can't afford to take multiple other sessions with you throughout the week. And so one thing I used to do when I was personal training was just be like, how do you feel about like what we've been doing? Do you have a good grasp on kind of how things generally work? And like, could you just come in a third day per week and maybe hit like the chest press machine and the tricep machine and then just do that on your own? Is that like feasible for you? And more often than not, people will say, oh yeah, like I feel pretty good. Like if you say, can you come in and do squats and deadlifts? They'll go, No, I'm not doing that by myself, right? But if you say like, can you just do this thing that's pretty easy, like a pull down or chest press, any of the kind of basic machines, and they have a feel for things like RIR and how many reps that they should be kind of shooting for. And if they have kind of a grasp of what you've been doing with them, then you can just say, hey, why don't you come in this third time this week, or maybe a fourth time, and just do some of these basic things. And you don't have to have me with you, because like, you don't need me here to do cable curls or tricep push downs and stuff like that.
Totally. James, that's a really good point. I just want to just real quick on it. If you give your clients the option of doing work on their own versus making them come in and charging them, they're going to really buy into you a lot of the times, because they're going to be like, oh my God, like these guys doesn't even want money. He just wants me to get results. You'll get incredible results. They'll refer like 50 trillion clients to you, and then you'll be rich. Like legit. Like back when Nick Shaw and I did personal training before we started RP, we gave all of our clients a talk. And if they wanted it, we gave them stuff to do outside of the gym. And we say, you only need to come in and see us two to three times a week. You could be training 5 times a week and crushing it. We'll just give you some mini goals to accomplish. Some of them were like, nah, just better off just doing it with you. And some of them had some degree of success getting on it. So it's the thing.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Next up is Lorenzo Vrolik. That's how I would say it. Yeah. Hilariously enough, in Russia, that last name would just be funny. It just sounds funny.
Lorenzo always makes me think of Lorenzo Lamas. Like,
yeah.
TV star.
But like, look, I'm straight as an arrow, but if Lorenzo Lamas came at me, I'd be like, look, I got all sorts of confusing thoughts in my head. I'm trying to recite Christian verses. Just do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing. Don't make out with Lorenzo Lamas. I keep telling myself.
don't make out with him. Don't make out with him. He's like sitting next to you on a plane. You're like, don't make out with him. He's like,
that guy's really big, and I sure hope he doesn't try anything. And I'm like, don't do it again. Just don't let it happen again. He's like, Jesus Christ, have I hooked up with this guy before?
Like, oh, hi, sir. You seems like you recognize me. Like, don't talk to me. I'm thinking about making out with you.
Look, I loved all the movies you were in and the series. I loved Hercules. What was that other one where that Native American gentleman had the Hummer?
Oh, fuck. That's going to bother me now.
Yeah. Well,
all of them are good.
We're not going to go down this route. I'm just going to Google it right now. Lorenzo.
Just pull up his IMDb.
No, Lorenzo Lamas, American actor. Okay, it's great. Thank you, IMDb. Let's see. What is he known for? IMDb. Come on. He is known for. All right, so hold on. He's his father was Argentinian and his mother was American of Norwegian descent. Of course, he's the ultimate human.
Of course.
Well, he's been doing a lot of shit lately that sucks. I'm trying to scroll down to the earlier shit that was relevant. He's been in shit this entire time. Good God.
Now I'm going to look this up when we sign off.
Invasion America? What the fuck? Renegade. That's what it was.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. God damn. The 90s was a wild time.
Wild time. All right. Lorenzo Vrolik asks, calf raises, is it better to do them all standing, all of them sitting, a mix, or does it not matter? I was under the impression that doing them in a sitting position places the gastroc in a position of active insufficiency. Correct. It's targeting more of the soleus, but how useful is targeting the soleus when it is the gastroc that makes your calves look so juicy? Mm-hmm. So it kind of depends on what your calves are shaped like. Sometimes guys will have really big gastrocs at the top, but then like no soleus, so it just goes bloop, like that, and then it kind of looks like you have like a shank down there, like robot legs, which is like a cool look. A lot of people want a lot of gastroc development and at least some soleus development. Good news, you get a bit of both when you do calves in various rep ranges. If you really want to dot all your I's and cross all your T's, you may do like once or twice a week, just for a few sets, do seated calves just to really get the soleus. I would highly recommend doing them for higher reps because there's predominantly slow twitch muscle. Probably doesn't, it grows fine from a lot of load, but you probably grow it well with higher reps and get much less fatigue. But I never do. And I think my calves have been growing really well. Almost no bodybuilders do. Most of the time when people do seated calves, it's because they want to use a lot of weight on something with a really partial range of motion and sort of check the box of having done calves. And they get to sit down doing it. The problem is the gastroc gets almost entirely no activity, and then you don't actually grow big calves like that. So yeah, almost all standing. If you want to dot the I's to cross the T's with sitting, you can. I would do a very small amount of it because it gets hit with standing anyway.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They've shown in some pretty interesting kind of EMG studies. Now, EMG is not perfect, but if you do kind of standing or we'll say mostly straight-legged kind of calf variations, you hit the gastroc really hard and you hit the soleus pretty darn hard too. Maybe not as ideally as if you did like a soleus specific bent knee version, but you get enough just spillover on both of them that it's kind of a very efficient way to train calves with a relatively straight leg. It's like there's not really any incentive to do it any other way unless just for having some extra variation or you have just really shitty soleus muscles.
Yep. All right. Next up is, to quote the devil from South Park, Creus.
Creus.
Oh, boy. Creus. He had kind of like a mini list for the devil.
Hey, Satan.
Saddam Hussein in South Park was easily the best character.
Dude, so good.
Hey, come on, you guys.
He was like so bad that Satan thought he was too much. He's like, Jesus Christ, what's wrong with you? He's like,
I love it here.
Dude, their like love triangle was so funny.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't really a triangle so much as like he just kept murdering Satan's boyfriend.
That's right. And then like realized it because he was in hell, he couldn't murder him. He would just come back, but like morally, it was still bad. Like,
This guy again.
And he's like, "What was I gonna go? Where was I gonna go? Hell?" He's like,
I guess you're right. God damn it.
Dude, South Park's amazing.
All right, that's probably one of my favorite all-time quotes. Is when they were at the Ritalin episode where everyone had quote unquote ADD.
Yes.
And then the Christina Aguilera monsters were just like a random thing you'd get as a side effect. It was just a bug. And she literally comes up and Cartman's like, what the hell? And she's like, he's like, she didn't really have anything to say. It was just like,
get out of here, Christina Aguilera monster.
Can you imagine being Christina Aguilera and seeing that TV? If I was me, it's like, oh, it's a Dr. Mike monster. I was like, I would have been laughing for like 5 years straight. What an honor.
Yeah. Christina Aguilera looks like she's been outside against her will for too long.
Jesus Christ, James. That's a hell of an endorsement. I will say, though, bitch can sing.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Can sing her ass off.
Yeah. She's
her
amazing.
and Lady Gaga are like professional level.
I'm a Lady
trained.
Gaga fan.
Yeah. Could easily be like in fucking opera. But like, he had all that bullshit, the vibrato, the range, all that shit. It was like Britney Spears is a fine singer, but mostly, just does the hormone thing, which is,
give me,
like, can we do this song but with less sex? The whole production crew is like, that's not really.
She was like the Disturbed of pop music with those fucking noises.
Disturbed. What an honor.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically the same.
All right, Chris Freyeth says, Docs, what do you think for the first meso block? Doing only sets of 5 to 10 and 10 to 20 for certain muscle groups, would you be missing out on optimal hypertrophy gains? Would that be offset by a greater potentiating effect once you include introduce sets of 10, 20, 30 in the next meso? Thanks a lot. Appreciate all the great info you guys put out. I think that's totally fine. The only thing I would really be worried about is exercises that like their SFR or muscle groups where their SFR is just so good in the 20 to 30 and so shit in anything else that you're like trying to do 5 to 10, 10 to 20. You're like, this sucks. Why am I just doing shitty training? It's like somebody told you like, oh, I only train quads in the 2 to 3 rep range. And the next meso, you'll be able to go in the 5 to 15. And you're like, well, I'm just going to I'm not going to grow quads for this time. And I might get hurt. So there are some rare exceptions, but some exercises just, some muscle groups just not much happens even in the 10 to 20 range. On the 15 to 20 range, you get some good stuff, but you're like, man, I swear, when I go into 20 to 30, it just blows my shit up. Then yeah, like if you don't have any replacements, I would make sure to include some of that. That's the deal.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, so like if you read the hypertrophy book, we kind of recommend having a little bit of everything in each phase. But again, it's largely a matter of SFR. So are you leaving anything on the table by not doing the 20-30? Depends on if 20 to 30 hits the best SFR for certain muscles, right? Then you definitely are. And it's like, well, why are you doing that? Well, I need to do sets of 6 for my calves. Like, okay, have fun with that. That's going to be real great.
Real good example. 100%.
So, it's, it kind of depends. It's hard to say yes or no. That's why we said like you have a little spattering of each and then maybe shift the emphasis of those ranges across your mesocycles. And then you take that kind of broad notion and then you say, well, which are the best SFRs for my particular muscles and situations? And then you maybe bias even more in that direction per mesocycle. So it's only leaving something on the table if you're just deliberately taking the worst, shittiest rep ranges for your muscle groups. So just don't do that.
Yep. Next up is Andrew Atkinson.
Andrew Atkinson. Got it.
He says, "Hi, Ducks. What are your thoughts on starting to cut more aggressively, say 1% rate loss, or even more possibly, for a few weeks, then slowing down the rate of loss by upping calories slightly? What are the pros and cons of that, and how would you advise for this? Thanks. Thank you so much as ever." Well, so first, Andrew, I think it could be a fine idea in some situations. Almost all bodybuilding preps look like this. You lose a little bit quickly at first. You don't want to lose real fast at first because it just sums up a lot of fatigue. But you may lose more quickly at first, especially if it doesn't require pushing the system too hard.
Yeah.
So if you're like losing fast at first, and it requires like heaven and earth efforts, and you're getting super hungry and super tired early, don't do that. But if you're losing fast and you're like, wow, I'm not even hungry, I have plenty of energy, just keep doing that until it exhausts itself. What I wouldn't do is slow down the rate of loss by upping calories slightly. What I think what happened was the rate of loss will slow itself down just through metabolic adaptation and 50 other mechanisms. And then you might just not cut calories as aggressively as you would to keep the 1%, but either leave them to keep a 0.5% or something, or cut them just a little to keep 0.5. So I would say the rate of loss could look like this, right? And that's totally fine. Is it better than linear? There's probably some ups and downs. One thing I would say is for you personally, could be a fine idea. For regular fitness clients, personal training clients, diet clients, online folks, I'd say like a linear approach is really good because it allows people to contextualize what's going on really well. It is not a second order complexity problem where they're like, how am I doing? And you're like, well, check your line. And it's a fucking exponential curve. And they're like, I guess I'm below the line. That's good. You're like, yeah. They're like, it's just not very intuitive. It's like, so I was losing a pound a week last week. Like, is that too much now? Should I slow down? It's like, God damn it. Like, it just lose a fucking pound every week for 12 weeks and you'll be good, right? The diet's a little easier when you start, a little harder when you stop. But for someone like you who clearly knows what they're doing, I think it's totally fine. Just don't cut so aggressively at first that it feels aggressive. If it feels aggressive at first, you're making a big mistake. It should feel easy. And if that is or super fast, then that's totally fine. And then later you could just not be as aggressive with the cutting. I'm sure as hell would introduce more calories later, because that's almost certainly going to put you up to losing nothing with a metabolic adaptation. James?
Yeah. Very, very good there, Dr. Mike. And I think for somebody like you, Andrew, the way that this manifests is like you start a cut after you had been doing maintenance or whatever for a minute, and maybe you reduce calories and you start adding like maybe 20 minutes of cardio per day. And all of a sudden, like you just start dropping weight. And like Mike said, maybe you just like, wow, I don't feel it at all. And it's just like enough of a lifestyle change where you're actually dropping weight at a pretty high rate and not really feeling any wear and tear. That's good. That eventually will slow down. And then you kind of go from there and decide what you want to do. For your clients and people who are kind of new, very often the case is like you get them eating more healthy just right off the bat, and eating more fruits and whole grains and less Sbarro and macas, right? And
Sbarro, James. Sbarro is like by law relegated
let me get a strong
to
bowl.
Airports in New York City. New York City shithole tourist spots and airports is the only legal place Sbarro can exist in America. I've never seen a single organic American person randomly say like, hey, you guys want to hit up Sbarro? Like you get punched in the face for saying some shit like that.
But that's like, they work somewhere like in the mall and they're like, let me go up to the food court, get a fucking strong bowl for lunch, So they start cutting that shit out. And they might see really, really rapid weight loss. One, from just like de-bloating because they're eating just garbage all the time. And two, maybe because their diet's just getting so tidy. So in that case, it's good. But I think like Dr. Mike said, for them to contextualize what they're doing and kind of see how it works, it's kind of better just to have like a slow, steady pace for the most part. So a lot of the times I'll use like the first week or two as kind of a buffering period where it's kind of like, I don't want to say hands up in the air, but like, don't put too much stock in whatever happens in the first week or two of a diet, whether you change the diet and added cardio or you have a new person who's never dieted before. Usually give it a week or two and then start making more of the challenging decisions, because it's normal to have kind of a roller coaster look when you make major lifestyle changes.
Okay. Last for today is don't move that dial.
Hands off.
WTH is that cream.
That sounds like a hentai person who watches hentai.
Nonsense, James. None of our YouTube users watch hentai. Wait, no, I said that wrong. All of our YouTube users watch hentai. That's
exclusive. Our base is exclusively hentai watchers.
I want to, there's probably some kind of correlation you could draw where the degree to which a person says they don't watch hentai is directly proportional on average to how much they actually watch. Like you ask a typical person, like, hey, you watch hentai porn? The average guy who like sees it once a month would be like, yeah, for sure, it's sweet. And you get to like a real incel, and you're like, do you watch hentai porn? Like, of course not. That's depraved. I'm not a degenerate. I only have sex with blonde, 6-foot tall women consensually in my harem. You're like, oh, so you only watch hentai.
You said harem. I know you watch hentai now. You blew it.
Watch hentai for sure. You have not seen a man even in cartoon form have sex with a woman in years. It's all been octopus tentacles all the way down. It's always octopus tentacles.
100%. So like there is a separate, like subgenre of anime, which is like harem anime, which is where you have like
Of course there is.
It's like you have the normal protagonist who's like a 13-year-old boy, and all these fucking hot chicks are falling head over heels for him all the time, and he's like, oh, these girls are like always in my business, boring. And they're like, oh, so and so. That's what gave that guy away. You use the word that's in another context.
Yeah, sorry, harem guy.
Yeah,
you
harem
don't
guy.
actually have a harem. All right. Here's the deal. He says, hi, docs. What is the effect of rest times on hypertrophy? I understand it has longer rest times. For example, 2 minutes per set, all else equal, result in more hypertrophy because they allow for more reps per set and thus more volume. However, I was listening back to a previous webinar where Mike talked about effective reps, where he said something like rest times don't matter that much because while shorter rest time means lower total volumes, would you be doing more effective reps, and so the stimulus is similar? So is this correct that resting 2 minutes between sets and say getting 40 reps total over X number of sets is roughly similar in terms of hypertrophy to resting 30 seconds between sets and getting 25 reps over the same number of sets, RIR, load, et cetera, being the same? If not, how big is the difference between the two? Actually, we have it literally. It's one of the very rare times in sports science where this is not caveated, it's not nuanced at all. You're very, very confident in this assertion. If the limit to the set is the muscle itself, there is profoundly little, if not zero, relevant differences in hypertrophy. Okay, per set. The rep numbers and stuff get really weird. You just count hard sets; it makes it all better because it equalizes a lot of stuff. So what do I mean? So James and I have developed, James, myself, and Jared have developed the 4-factor rest time model. And if you weren't such a fucking ingrate, what the fuck is that cream? You would have read our fucking book. God damn it.
Yeah.
How dare you? No, how dare you ask us these stupid fucking questions? No, but on a serious note, the book super explains the shit out of this. And there's multiple YouTube videos we have on RP, which like literally just type in like 4-factor rest model, Israel or some shit, it'll come up. So here's the deal. What makes a set effective for the next time when you start doing it? What has to calm down between sets? First of all, you have to make sure that cardiovascular system isn't limiting. Like if you're about to do another set of squats for quads and you're still like, then you're clearly going to stop the next set, not because your quads fail, because your lungs have run out of fucking ability to expel carbon dioxide, and then you're just going to throw up all over yourself, rack the weight. It's not going to be a good set. Another consideration is, what about other muscles? Like if you're about to squat, but your lower back is still killing you, like from lactic acid pump in the lower back, clearly you may not be able to push your quads all the way to the maximum abilities. Another consideration is your nervous system recovery. And the best way to estimate this is like, do you feel real strong again? You know, like sort of like core feeling, like fucking get the shit. I fucking will myself over the weight versus like right after you do a set of hard dumbbell presses, you look at the dumbbells and you're like, how did I even lift those to begin with? Like they've defeated me. After a few minutes, you're like, no, I got the shit, right? And there's an honesty there that has to be broached, but you know when you're on, you know when you're off. You have to feel on. If you feel still exhausted, you're not going to be able to have the systemic drive to recruit all the muscle fibers that you want. You'll nominally do sets and reps, but not, those sets will be pretty low quality because a lot of the fastest twitch motor units, which recover the most or which require the most neural oomph to actually activate, you won't have that neural oomph, so you don't even sort of turn them on to begin with. And lastly, is the local muscle itself recover for you to do at least 5 reps per set, right? Because those are sort of the more effective reps of the last 5 anyway. And anything, it's been shown that hard sets of 5 reps or less work really well. Or 5 reps or more work really well. 5 reps or less, like it's just not enough stimulus per set. So here's an example. If you do calf raises and you finish and then 10 seconds later, there's no more lactic acid in your calves, you feel super fucking strong again. You never got out of breath because it's fucking calf raises, and there literally is no other synergist muscle. You get to go every 10 seconds, and those sets will be equivalent to if you rest much longer. And in some cases, even better because they summate more metabolites and they give you a bigger pump. You guys might notice, like if you rest 2 minutes between calf raise sets, like not a whole lot happens. You never really get a pump. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. It's like resting 10 minutes between each set of rows. Like, am I re-warming up again or something? But if you condense it and then you check all the factors, then you're good to go. For squatting, check in all the factors might take 4 or 5 minutes between sets. And if you condense it anymore, more sets doesn't mean more growth. It means the same amount of growth as fewer sets with longer rest times. The kind of hilarious answer to this is like, the best way to put it is it's good to rest as long as you need and there's no additional benefit in resting more. But if you rest not as long as you need, there's a real big cost. So rushing is a stupid idea, but taking your sweet fucking time only pays dividends until it checks the 4 boxes. And after that, it's by no means clear it pays any dividends at all. Very similar, hilariously, thing has been found with most test takers in the IQ literature and in the literature on just test performance is if you condense a test and make it a time pressure test, people start doing worse on average because there's just not enough time to think shit through. And if you give a lot of tests a certain amount of time, almost everyone, they either get the answers or they don't. And just, you ever see those people in class who stay like to the very end of the class and looking at the same question, like, motherfucker, you're not going to reinvent Einstein's equations in your own fucking head. Answer to say, you just clearly didn't study or you're just not smart enough to answer this question. Like it is, you give it a good hard think and then it's over, right? So same idea with training, get it in, rest just enough time, get it done, and resting anymore really just profits you nothing.
Yeah, 100% agree. And that's another way in which hypertrophy training is very kind of flexible, where, like other things like strength training and kind of sport specific training tend to be a little more rigid. And like, just to contextualize this a little bit, let's say you were doing hypertrophy training for sport. Maybe you were trying to get more muscular for powerlifting or for football or something like that. That is the rare instance where you might justify taking longer rest times simply for just the pure every single rep of every single set is as forceful and as powerful as you can make it. But again, like, what's the impact of that on hypertrophy? Probably not a ton, if any. It's more of how much of that is going to transfer into strength and power performance later on. Are you able to shift kind of the force velocity curve over a little bit across like submaximal loads? And then hopefully that translates into more maximal loads. But that's like the only time where it really makes any fucking difference. The rest of the time, it's very forgiving. And just like we've talked about with like exercise orders and prioritizations and intensity loading zones, like hypertrophy is really forgiving in this regard. You just have to check a few simple boxes. And that's the stuff that Mike already mentioned. So don't overthink this rest thing. This is what kind of it drives me nuts a little bit sometimes, because people are like, okay, what's the difference between 90 seconds and 2 minutes of rest? It's like, what? It doesn't matter. All that matters is how you feel about this exercise at this very moment. It doesn't matter what the actual number is. You just go from there.
Can you really pour it on and get great, like forceful muscle contractions? Is the muscle the limiting factor? If anything else is a limiting factor, that's not great. If the muscle is a limiting factor, you're kind of there, like you're there.
Yeah. So don't overthink the rest things too much. Like, I think it's one of those, like, more often than not, you can kind of intuit when you need to go. And then setting like restrictive rest times at that point just serves some external purpose. Like for me, I actually do set restrictive rest time, not restrictive, but like I set like a hard, like 3 minutes or 2 minutes. That's just because I got shit to do and I can't spend 2 hours in the gym. And that's a trade-off. Could I be getting maybe better results if I did something else? Sure. But again, you make trade-offs based on your lifestyle.
As it's the teeniest, tiniest differences, potentially none. Teeny tiny. I remember when I was in the wrestling locker room when I was in 9th grade, and the word teeny tiny, the phrase, came up a lot whenever I took my clothes off. I don't know why. Maybe I was a skinny kid.
Just dude talk in the locker room.
Just
right?
Guys having fun. Just boys,
guys messing around, getting in that shower,
these,
whipping with the towel.
You know what's funny is like a lot of straight dudes on like social media do that whole like bro talk with like, yeah, fucking steak needs to be rare, brother. Like, I love my Harley and fucking pepper and salt on a steak and fucking, yeah, I love sex, like just guys joking around, calling each other names. And like, to the rest of us that are straight, it's all just like, oh, right on. You proved to yourself you were a man 17 years ago. And now you're consistently have to tell yourself that every day. Slow clap. But dude, if I was fucking gay and into dudes, I would follow every single one of those people. Can you imagine like you and I are the girls. Can you imagine a girl being like, oh my God, just doing girl stuff. Haha. Like, yeah, hell yeah. Like what else? Like show me your girl life. It's just funny. Like the guys who are doing like I'm a fucking straight guy. Like you are a gay man magnet. The more of that shit you do, which is, oh, hey, maybe it's a secret. It's a secret strategy because maybe their guys are secretly gay. And they're like, if I come off super fucking straight and bro, like, in come the gay requests and I fulfill.
Man, it's so true. The the like masculine virtue signaling stuff drives me nuts. Like we get it.
But,
You're
at least
a
it's
man.
hot to gay guys. So
Yeah.
I think I don't know.
I think it's just like we're men.
Maybe
so
to them
we're,
they're even like rolling their eyes like Jesus.
we're like sensitive to it because we're both men, so we see it and we're like, dude, get out of here. But it is kind of annoying when they're like, I like to blend up cigars in my smoothies because I'm so fucking manly.
I've served in every war since Vietnam. Like, no,
I have 300 dogs and none of them sit on the couch.
But they all hate. No, that's like, none of them love me, but they all respect and fear me. You're like,
Yeah,
dude, your
just
dogs
like-
sound like they suck. What's like people who, okay, we're just like fun time with Mike and James now. People who get dogs that are like dangerous and require an inordinate amount of training to keep like from choking children to death with their teeth.
Oh my
Like,
God.
It's like, yeah, I've got to fucking Czechoslovakian shepherd. He's a fucking psycho. I got to make sure he gets $900 worth of fucking education a week from the police academy. Otherwise, he'll turn on me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand any of that. How
That's
is
a
that
feral
like,
dog.
Yeah, like who's benefiting from this? Like, are you like showing off how much money you have to piss away on dog training? Yo, not to talk shit, but our so Crystal and I have started to watch religiously, I would say, the greatest show you've ever recommended to me, which is Lawman by Steven Seagal.
Oh, yes. So good.
It's so good. They have Steven vision where he like zooms in on some guy carrying a gun and you're like, Steven saw it and it's all in like high def color where all the other stupid cops missed it. But he is exactly that person in this respect where he has like, he just bought 2 dogs and they hate each other. Like, and they're both like super psycho shepherds of some kind, like they're designed to kill people. And like, he can't even train them himself. He has to outsource the training. And then the guy trains him how to train his dogs so that they don't kill people. And they're like, he's like, these dogs have one primary purpose: to protect my family. Like, from what? Themselves? So you can just get rid of those dogs. Your family's going to be way safer. Fuck.
My dogs have 3 skills: looking cute, doing death-prone activities, and shrieking out of anxiety. That's all they do. It's like like fall off a cliff. That's all they do. They're cute and just
dog.
I mean, they are not winning any Darwin Awards anytime soon. Let's just put that out there.
Yeah, Crystal and I were hanging out with Joe Sullivan and Bree Terry, who just like super elite powerlifters here in Vegas, are good friends of ours. And Bree brought her bulldog Bruno, who's a Frenchie, but he's the size of an English for some reason.
Whoa. Oh my God, that's a huge Frenchie.
He's huge. And he literally came, he played with us for a sec, and then he went to the corner of the room and just stared into the corner for no reason for 5 minutes. He turned away from everyone.
Deep
Like, holy
thoughts.
shit, unbelievable. This dog is just useless in every capacity. And then he can jack off. So he's like rubbing his own dick with his paw, and then he switches paws because he gets tired.
It's tired.
Incredible.
Ooh, too much lactate on this one. Gotta go switch.
That's my low bar for what is a good dog. Like, is the dog happy? Like, yeah, I think so. Like, great, good enough. Does he know tricks? Whatever. Like, what tricks is a bulldog? James, your dogs must know some tricks by now, right?
Yeah, no, so the thing is, like, my dogs they're smart and they learn shit really quick. They just are like really anxious. So like you could just be sitting there and nothing's happening and they're like, it's just like, what is happening? Like they just shriek and freak out for no reason. And that's
I love it. I want a dog that has panic attacks. Do you feel sane by comparison?
Yeah, I mean, they're sweet dogs and I love them very much, but yeah, they're like we can't take them anywhere because their shriek is so deafening. It like physically hurt. It causes me physical pain when they do it. You know what I mean? It's just that frequent. I'm like, I'm going to go deaf when I'm 50 because of these fucking dogs. I swear to God.
At least they're not trying to kill your children.
No, they don't. That's the thing. They don't have a mean bone in their body. Like they panic because they like want to like endocytosis with you. Like they want to become fucking one with you because they love you so much. And if you don't let them, they shriek and panic. Like,
what would they do if you actually let them run towards the deer on your property?
oh, they've already done it. They just take off. So Samoyeds have one of the worst wanderlust scores, meaning they will just go and leave. Like, so everybody in my neighborhood has all these great dogs that are so well trained. They're off the leash and they just come. And like mine will come if I call them, but if there's like a fucking deer or something in the yard, they'll just run for like 3 miles.
They're not hunting. They're trying to play with the deer.
I think they're curious about it, and then they're chasing it, and then they don't want to kill it, but they are curious, and then the deer will fucking outrun them like it's nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then they'll just be like, "Sweet, let's go adventure."
Look, new things I haven't seen before.
It's happened where they've like run like a mile down the road. I had to get the side by side and like chase them down. But they've gotten out a couple times, so I'm that guy. Whenever we have to bring our dog somewhere, everybody else's dogs is like in the park having fun. Mine are like, like
On leashes, yelling.
anxiety poo. Like they do the anxiety
Aw.
poo. They get like worked up and they're like, oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah. They're something.
Well, folks, if you get a dog, make sure it's mean so it impresses other people. I've been Mike.
So you
This has
can
been
reaffirm
James.
your manliness.
That's right.
Okay, let's do housekeeping. Dr. Mike, anything fun in the works?
Yes, but I can't talk about it yet. But soon.
Oh, very, very. You cock tease. Bad boy. I'm trying to think. There are some things in the work that I can't talk about. There's good things coming.
Folks, I'm a semi-permanent guest host on Greg Doucette's channel. Him and I did a bunch of videos together.
I was going to ask you if you are doing that voluntarily. What's going on with that?
Yeah. So Greg hit me up and he's like, hey, like a lot of people have questions for you on my channel. You want to come answer some questions? We'll sort of debate and hash it out. I'm like, sure. And I said last time, like he was being fake mean and I was being for real mean, sort of. And then his viewers got upset. So I was like, oh, it should be nice this time. And it was nice. And it's all old hat to Greg. So it was cool. We answered some questions. And so we've recorded like 2.5 hours of video. We probably have like a good 10 videos left. And there's like 2 or 3 of them have come out. People really seem to like them. It's just answering a lot of common questions he gets on his shit from a sports science perspective. And it's nice if you go on there and then, talk that shit from RP, get in the comments section and get wiggy, if you like.
Get wiggy. Is that sounds like a Will Smith song.
Jiggy.
Mm-hmm. But I like wiggy.
Same.
Wiggy with it.
Yeah. Wiggle out.
All right, folks, I think we're going to wrap this one up. Thanks again for your good questions. Friendly reminder, if you guys have questions that you want to ask, you can absolutely pop them into the most recent Q&A YouTube. However, what we recommend you do first is just maybe give a quick scan through of the comments that are already there and upvote the ones that you think are the best. Even if like your question isn't there, it actually is helpful for us too if you just upvote anyway. So if you see people who have good questions or insightful questions, go ahead and upvote. And if you still feel like you have one that you want to get answered, you can pop it in there too.
Upvote your own question even.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like voting yourself like homecoming queen, but it's fine, whatever. No one's going to judge you.
Look, if you get to cast a ballot, it's just one more vote for you.
Exactly. All right, folks, wrapping this one up. Thanks again for the questions, and we will talk to you next time.